Let's call our meeting to order. I'll ask the treasurer to call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Vice President Cole?
Here.
Ms. Gibbs?
Here.
Ms. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Peretti?
Okay, thank
Ms.
you.
Reyes?
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I think we can dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance unless anyone objects. Let's move on. Is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as it is before you?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're here to discuss our superintendent search. That's the purpose of this special meeting, as you all know. And so Dr. Bill Reimer is here from the ESC of Central Ohio. And as you all know, he's the individual who's been assigned by the ESC to help us through the process. And he's going to talk about that, as well as the three mediator candidates he brought here this evening. A bio for which you should have received and hopefully have a chance to review. So, Dr. Reimer, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay. First, I just want to say that our superintendent at the Educational Service Center, Dr. Tom Goodney, sends his regards, and he's the one that really stepped forward initially and said the Educational Service Center would be happy to be of service to Columbus City Schools in any way that you would like to use us. And that's pretty typical. One of the things we do as a service agency is we provide services for districts that they need and want, and or some of us, myself and Dr. George Tombaugh, who's here tonight too, we also serve as consultants to superintendents and consultants to school boards here in Central Ohio. So it's something that we do a lot of, and he just thought he wanted to step forward and volunteer that we'd be happy to help out if we can be of any service or any help to you. So I watched your last meeting, and the one thing I took away was you wanted some help with the finding a mediator and having that available to you. And so George and I have already stepped on to that and tried to do that, and I think we'll show you tonight, we can assist you with that and take care of that. The Educational Service Center has also told your chairman that we would be happy to not only employ but also pay the mediator services for the district. As part of our, we already have a contract with Columbus Public, but part of our services we would include with that. So that's what brought us here, brought us to the table.
Thank you.
And according to your wishes last meeting, and I watched it on TV, so I think I have a pretty good idea of what your wishes were. It was to find and narrow the list down, and a lot of the list suggestions came from you, board members. Some of them came from us, and we, George and I, tried to narrow that list down to 3, and we've invited those 3 to come in tonight and to talk with you. And the whole purpose of that is, and I wanted to really stress this, we realize that they're going to be in here for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, each one of them individually. So nobody's pretending this is an interview of any kind. You've already looked at their resumes, and we've looked at that. We've talked to them on the phone already at length. We will talk more with them. And what we need tonight is for you to take that 5 or 10 minutes and get a feel for these individuals as people, and whether or not you think they're a good fit for the needs of this particular school board whenever and if that arises. Mm-hmm. They've been told that the mediator position is going to be sort of and I hope I got this right. If I didn't, you'll have to correct me. But they've been told that this position will be sort of an on-call kind of a position, that the board does want to, as much as possible, work themselves. I think one of you even said that to me, that the board would like to try to deal with things themselves. And if we come to loggerheads or we just can't get things done, then maybe we want to call somebody in and have somebody help us with that. Now, if that's not so, you'll have to straighten me out afterwards with that, so.
Ms. Hudson?
Thank you. I think in the resolution, it was that the mediator was described in the resolution, I think was more of the person running point. So like helping us call meetings, helping us with finding the search firm and then convening the meetings so they would be here for those meetings. So I don't think they would just be on call.
Okay. And if that's the case, you'll have to give me that direction so I make that clear.
Or would be per the description in the resolution.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown?
And one thought, and I know we've each had conversations with Bill, but as I've thought this through, we may want to consider having perhaps even ESC, if they're willing, serve as that point person for scheduling, for some of the logistical and administrative pieces, and take that off the person that we would like to serve as our mediator. I don't know for sure how much or how little time mediator will need to spend with us. I think more at the beginning stages perhaps, and we'll figure out what we can do on our own.
Sorry,
But,
traffic.
Good evening, Dominic.
Welcome, Mr. Peretti.
But I think, I'd like to see us just be open to that as we work through the conversation.
I appreciate that, and as Bill spoke to each of us, I know that he made a list of the feedback he received from us, and I don't know if he wants to share that.
Well, why don't we wait, because we've got people waiting out there. I thought we'd go ahead with that first, and then I'll get that out to you too. So.
Any other? Ms. Gibbs?
Well, I was going to say, I think it's very important that we're clear about what we're asking them or what we think their role is, and to the spirit of the resolution, that's what we ask them to do, and we don't want them to feel as if though it's a bait and switch on our part, and that they know that we are thinking about them more than on call in that regard, and that they'll be working with us to identify, but they don't have to do the tasks that the search firm is going to do, and they don't have to do the tasks that council is going to do. So it's a
and we'll have to make that clear, because they are under the impression, I believe all of them, or all three of them, that it's sort of an as needed basis.
but we need them a lot.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, that could be.
Yes, Ms.
I
Hudson.
guess I would say, if they, we, at the outset, we have some meetings already scheduled. We schedule as we schedule more meetings, that would be when they would be needed, I think. It would be when we convene. And so they would help us with that, with kind of helping chair that meeting, run that meeting. And I think once we get going, as we're moving forward, I think their role probably would diminish. But it's beyond just, oh gosh, we need them, have them, here's the hotline, let's call.
Yeah, I think every time we
Yes.
have a meeting scheduled for this purpose, for working on the search, that we'd want to have them, at least until we decide something different.
Sure.
And we had also talked last time as well, in addition to that, having Bill sort of be a facilitator, a helper, a coordinator, project manager almost, that can help bring those ESC resources to bear, such as the mediator, as we go through the process. So I think that's a good model.
Well, why don't we bring them in and have them talk, and I'll surprise each of them with the information that there's going to be that, because I was not under that impression. I had a false impression of what that was going to be.
And Dr. Reimer, who will you bring in first?
I think William is going to come in first from OSU, William Freilick.
Ms. Gibbs, did you have a question?
Yes. Can you discuss how this is going to go? How do you see this next section?
We were just going to bring them in, give them a minute to say something to you, to introduce themselves to you in whatever fashion they feel comfortable. doing. And then they expect that the board might ask questions of them. I've got some questions I could ask of them to get them started on some things, and you could also ask questions.
You're gonna bring them in one by one,
Yes,
and then we'll discuss afterwards?
yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Have they seen the resolution?
No, I don't think they've seen the resolution.
Is it possible to get them a copy of the, there's no JC. There's no JC.
Yes,
They can
we
look
do
at it,
that.
so we're not deciding on who they are
Mhm.
today, because they may
Yeah.
not be fully aware to answer the way we need them to, but,
Yeah,
okay.
You have the resolution though, right?
I have a copy of it.
Okay, do you have it with you?
I think I do.
Here's one, if it's handy.
Yeah.
Just,
You share it with them and maybe make some
I'll make
copies.
a copy.
Jacqueline, would you mind? Jacqueline can make copies if you like.
Good copies.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's give them a moment to read it.
So the first one is Mr. Freilich.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I thought George was there, but I'll have to go get him.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, while we're waiting, would it be helpful if we even, during this meeting, or we write down something clear, so when he just asked us with the role of the mediator, that we have something, just a couple bullet points that's very clear about what we're thinking their role is.
Well,
So that, I think we might need
The
that for
resolution.
clarity.
The
I mean,
resolution
it's,
spells it out pretty clearly.
I mean, it's the
So,
resolution,
yeah.
so.
The resolution is
If
very
you think
clear.
that's
Right.
clear enough, then.
This is William Freilich. He's from OSU, and he's part of the faculty at the law school there.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, thanks for having me today.
Thank you.
Sure, happy to be
Bill,
here.
why don't you start off by just, the board wants to spend some time just getting to know you a little bit, to have a sense of what kind of fit you might be for the school board and for the district.
It's all
Just
public.
maybe share something
Yes.
about yourself that you think might be interesting to them, anything that you feel comfortable telling.
Sure. Thanks, Dr.
They've
Reimer.
got your resume.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Reimer, President Baker, board members. I appreciate you having me here today, and I'm honored to be here. I am a Columbus resident, and frankly, when an institution in the city of Columbus contacts me and asks if I can be supportive in any way, I do my best to say yes. And so you're asking for a mediator to support you in having constructive conversations about how to select a leader for this school system. And I think I have the skill set to support you in doing that. And I have a background in education, frankly. My wife is here with me. I don't know if she came in the room, but she's an educator. She teaches 700 K through 6 art students in a rural school district. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how the teachers in this school district teach tons of children every day. They have more patience than I do in the classroom, that's for sure. My parents are both versed in education. My father is a school board member. My mother is a retired administrator and teacher. And I find myself now at Moritz teaching mediation and alternative dispute resolution. And frankly, it's a dream job for me. I get the chance to support groups in having difficult conversations. So a few of those programs that I've been involved with are one called the Divided Community Project that helps communities who are interested in transitioning community tension and division into forward-looking action. That's a broad collaborative conversation in a few communities across the country. And it's fun work, and I really enjoy doing it. I also have the opportunity to support other dispute resolution work here in Ohio at the Supreme Court. I'll be teaching a basic mediation training class this summer for the Supreme Court, and to collaborate with other law schools on dispute resolution projects across the country. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions about my style as a mediator or any other questions you might have for me about how we engage in this process.
Let me start quickly, Bill, with just giving you an update. There was a misunderstanding on my part when I said to you that we would be talking about a mediator position that would be sort of on call or as needed. The board has about 4 or 5 meetings already scheduled that they believe they will want to have the mediator be part of that whole thing. So it's good. It's a little different than I described to you before. I wanted you to know that while we're talking the rest of the way.
It's in the third paragraph.
That's a write-up of the board resolution that's got the specifics on it of what they're after.
And colleagues, you all have the bio for Mr. Freilich. And are there questions from board members, Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much, Mr. Freilich, for joining us this evening and having our shared interest in trying to find the best talent possible here in the district. Can you talk a little bit about your Sunshine Law experience, the experience that you may have with open meetings law, and how you would guide us through that process as we, deliberate and make decisions?
Sure, in my role as a mediator, I don't see my role as giving you legal advice about what the Sunshine Law says or doesn't say. I understand you'll be hiring outside counsel to do that. But my role is to support you in decisions you make, whether they're about the Sunshine Law or about other issues, and to help you clarify your interests and perspectives about whether they're legal issues or non-legal issues or issues that relate to the community or how to hire a search firm. But I'm not going to make substantive choices for you, because as a mediator, I'm a facilitator. My primary role is to help you engage in difficult conversations, and help you clarify and understand your collective and individual perspectives a little bit better. That said, I do have some experience and knowledge with the Ohio Public Records Act. For example, you might know there's a mediation privilege. There's an exception under 149.43. I have some experience working with school districts and municipalities filing public records requests from when I was practicing 4 to 7 years ago.
Other questions from board members? Mr. Brown?
Yeah. One of the things that at least some of us, maybe all of us, agree with is that this process of identifying, recruiting, and hiring a superintendent would be best if it's a consensus choice at the end, rather than a majority, 4-3 decision. If we can achieve that, and that would be true for decisions along the way, to try to get to consensus when possible. Do you have some approaches that work best when you're trying to develop consensus with the group versus, whatever the other approaches are, simply getting a decision?
Sure. So it depends on how the group is defining consensus. And I think it would be valuable to have a collective conversation about what that means. Consensus might mean to some board members or some individuals that everyone says yes. Consensus might also mean that no one says no. And I think there's a distinction there. There might be other valuable ideas about what consensus means, and if that's the goal collectively you're striving for, I'd like to have that conversation and then move towards that idea if that's something you're prioritizing.
Other questions from board members? Ms. Gibbs?
Tell me about the most difficult group you've ever had to facilitate and mediate. What was challenging about that group, and were you able to bring them to their version of a successful resolution?
Every facilitation mediation has its own challenges. And as I'm thinking of a most challenging group.
Don't name them, but okay.
Oh, sure. Well, I have a mediator, a privilege that I can't violate, so I wouldn't name them. I think some of the work that I do with the Divided Community Project in communities, 5 pilot communities across the country, is exceptionally challenging because the idea of the project is that we plan in advance of civil unrest. The group took from Ferguson, Missouri, lessons from Ferguson, lessons from Sanford, Florida, and other communities across the country, and said, how can we as a community develop trust and resilience in advance of a triggering event that might lead to unrest, so that when unrest does happen, because it's a form of speech, it should happen, right? It's a First Amendment right, that it's safe and there aren't any arrests, right? And perhaps we can turn that protest into constructive, forward-looking action. I think the most difficult conversations I've been involved with facilitating, I would say co-facilitated, are at focusing broad-based coalitions of community leaders on an abstract idea. What are we planning for? I don't know. There's a current issue about a police-involved shooting, but what's the next issue? How do we be proactive? That's a difficult conversation to have because you don't know what the next incident is.
And the second part is, tell me about how you brought them to their level of success, or in any one of these.
Patience in the conversation, hearing from a broad group of voices that represent diversity in the community, and checking in with other individuals to make sure they're on the right track.
Okay, very good, Mr. Freilich. Thank you for being here tonight, and I know the ESC will follow up with you subsequently.
Thank you, President Baker.
That's good.
Good luck with your
wait a minute.
research. Oh, sure.
Did you have any questions for us?
Oh, sure. As I read the resolution, and I think I had a copy of this previously, I think that I read it as you're looking for the mediator to both facilitate a conversation amongst board members, as well as a conversation with the search consultant. And I want to make sure that I'm understanding that idea correctly, or perhaps there's different perspectives, and I'd be mediating what the mediator's role would be as well, which I'm comfortable with that.
Well, I think that's probably fair to say. So I think that you wouldn't encounter anything that you hadn't encountered before with a group of folks who are interested in achieving the same goal but may have different thoughts about how to get there. So I don't think you'd be surprised by what you would encounter.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
That's my primary question.
Okay.
Smiles, though.
Thank you, Mr. Freilich.
Very good.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
And thank you to your wife too for her service to students of her district.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Reimer, who have we next?
Next we'll have Joelle, and she'll be, very good, George. Oh, you were here already.
Right here. How are you?
I didn't see you.
All good. How are you?
Good evening.
Wonderful, good evening.
This is Joelle Kusan, and she's in the law firm of Bricker and Eckler.
It's nice to be here with all of you tonight. Let me share a little bit about myself. So I'm a partner at Bricker and Eckler in the Employment Law Group, and I am also the city attorney for the city of Grandview Heights. So I have done a fair amount of public work in my career. I've served in that capacity for about 12 years. Not to preempt any questions, but it's unusual to be in the position of sitting here listening to other people's comments. I do work in the space of public records quite frequently. We get requests very routinely at the city, and I advise on those, but exactly as Professor Freilich indicated, you're not retaining anyone here at this moment to serve in the capacity of advising you on those things, just to facilitate dialogue around those kinds of things to the extent that that's needed. I've been practicing for 26 years, the vast majority of that time doing labor and employment, 3 years at the very beginning of my career doing just workers' compensation. My experience in mediation has been both as an advocate for parties who are participating in a mediation, as well as a mediator, sometimes on a volunteer basis and sometimes on a paid basis. So at some point, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission was definitely strapped budgetarily as well as from a manpower standpoint, and was looking for people to participate as volunteer mediators. And I took that opportunity, which provided me with some not only additional experience, but insight into really taking a step back and not serving as an advocate, but learning to listen to parties, learning to encourage the facilitation and the ongoing conversation, and sometimes taking a little bit of a timeout, walking away, coming back, which is a very different skill set than being a participant in mediation and, you know, advocating for a particular position. That said, I've done mediations at the federal court, at the Court of Common Pleas. The vast majority of my mediation experience has been handling employment cases and handling personal injury type cases or complex contract types of disputes. This definitely is a different kind of situation. But that said, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. And Vice President, I think you had a question?
Yes, I did. You mentioned something that struck me. You talked about the coming together and then seeming like you're at an impasse and then having a walk-away point.
Oh, not necessarily walking away, but sometimes people just need
A
to
break.
take a little step back.
Yeah.
Exactly, take a break. And sometimes it's a formalized break in the sense of, we've been here all day, it may not be productive to keep going today. For example, in labor negotiations that I participate in fairly regularly, we try to plan for 2 to 3 hour windows at the most, and to plan to tackle a finite set of things in a meeting, to make sure that tensions don't get escalated, to make sure that people are focused and not scattered in their approach to whatever the issues are at hand. And then you reconvene, and you try to have a certain number of meetings established in advance, try to work through your sets of issues over a space of time so that people are not tense and not predisposed to come to agreement.
Understand. How do you do that? How do you reset? How do you start the reset button with this group? Is it shared values? I mean, how do you do the reset process
Right.
to get it back started again?
Right. So I think shared values is exactly the right way to say it. I think it's important for all of the parties to want to be there in good faith for the same reason. I mean, the one thing that I don't really have a lot of tolerance for is people coming to a mediation, say in an employment case or any sort of other court dispute, where they're just on a fishing expedition. It's really important that everybody be there with the hope that it will resolve. And resolving doesn't necessarily mean everybody walks away happy. More often than not, it means everybody walks away equally unhappy. But the goal should be, we want finality, we value finality, we value a common goal. In the labor context, people have an ongoing relationship. You know, they're going to come back together every 3 years to negotiate over a police contract or a fire contract, and they should value that level of respect that everybody in the negotiating group has. So kind of underscoring those values and working toward whatever the desirable outcome will be. It's not just about money. Typically, there's a lot of other things that are going on in the background, be it feeling respected, feeling valued, and right now I'm thinking of things like a police or fire type of a negotiation, where it's not just about money. So understanding what it is that the people all want to strive for, talking with them individually in the caucus sessions, and understanding, what do you want to see come out of this? What's really important? What's maybe a little less important? A lot of times there are a lot of non-monetary things that make a difference to people, and it's important to focus on those as well.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've had the same experience as a mediator with differences between parties that were never going to see each other again, and those such as labor negotiations, which they come together every 3 years or so. Could you comment, maybe it's just preliminary thoughts, or on working with a group like this, 7 of us, that work together on school issues a lot, at least 2 regular meetings a month, and way beyond that with committee work and other kinds of things. Here, it would be pertaining only to the superintendent's search, but it's still going to be, kind of an ongoing process and ongoing after we're completed with a search successfully. So do you have some thoughts on how, how the role would change and what you would do differently?
Well, that's a really good question. I think to the extent that you have identified certain criteria that you all value in your next superintendent, I would imagine those have already been established with your search firm. As you review candidates or prospects, I think understanding how many of those criteria are met and whether everybody is willing to accept that somebody may only have 80% of your criteria and somebody may have 70% of your criteria. Where are the compromises that can be made, and really what's in the long-term best interest of the district? We make decisions based on fairly brief meetings, vetting meetings with people, and then those decisions can have significant impacts for many years to come. And people are people evolve. People, may have done a certain level of accomplishment in another community that they served previously, and they may thrive tremendously in Columbus. So I think there's kind of a delicate balance to be had between, how somebody appears on paper and in an interview and what their potential is, and having all of you come to some understanding about, what your risk tolerance, in a sense, is for the decision you're about to make that could have an impact for many years to come. Just understanding what those variables are and trying to find some common ground.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very unscientific answer, but
That's a good one.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members for Ms. Kazan? Yes, Board Member Gibbs.
Go ahead, thank you. Tell me about the most difficult group you've ever facilitated. Very consistent.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd ask that.
Yeah, tell me about the most difficult piece, and without naming them,
yeah,
and
and
how
that's
you got
fine.
to the solution.
Nothing nearly as complex as Professor Freilich indicated. I had a case where I was a volunteer mediator a number of years ago that involved multiple construction-related companies, maybe like 6 or 7 parties that were named as defendants in the case, and there were some fairly severe repercussions that had happened to the plaintiffs in the case, and the parties were millions of dollars apart. And the complexity really just had to do with the fact that all of these contractors had very different goals in getting out of the case and had very different drivers from their insurance companies as to what it would take to get them out of the case. The fact that it was a multi-party negotiation was really what made it very complicated. We had a lot of caucuses, a lot of small mini mediations in a sense, and ultimately I think if I recall 2, possibly 3 of the parties ended up settling. They had less exposure. But there was not, while I was involved in the case, a final global resolution, unfortunately. But we were at least able to flesh out what the primary areas of concern were, that we're going to get people into the realm of having, some common sets of numbers, some workable numbers. I mean, they came off the many zeros and got into a range, understanding what the insurance companies were able to put up, into a range that with further discussion they might have reached an outcome.
Okay, Ms. Kazam, do you have any questions for the board at this time?
I don't at this point. I'm delighted that you're going through this process and that you're giving a lot of thought to how to make this the most successful search possible. And I appreciate the work of all of you on behalf of the community.
Well, thank you for being here. The
Thanks.
ESC will follow up with you.
Joelle, did you hear my earlier spoke to Bill about the differences
I did.
in what before.
I did, and would it be okay if I?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Reimer, or Dr. Tombaugh, what do we have next?
Yeah, okay. We thought there was going to be a third one, and here, and I don't know.
There's somebody
exactly why.
downstairs that answering the door.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
we've been
please.
trying to watch that,
Oh,
He's
down there, so.
so.
You said Rick's done it?
No, there's somebody downstairs.
Yeah, they let me in.
So they would like.
Yeah,
this
security's
must be-
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's
Viper factor?
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Can I ask a question?
Ms. Gibbs?
Wanted to fill
Well-
up his spare time.
I have a question then of the two candidates in general, just with knowing our established dates and the time that we need, do we believe they'll be able to accommodate our time frame and what, and those are just the first set of dates, and that there may be many more with very established and esteemed engagement. Do they think they'll be able to
Well,
have time?
and since they just heard that,
Yeah.
because as I said, I had told them that I thought this was going to be a situation of on-call. And so we'll have to go through that. We've got the dates of your meetings. The first one was tomorrow night. And then there were 4 or 5 others.
And Dr. Reimer, was that in some part because, thank you, Mr. President, was that in some part because you thought that you would be doing a fair amount of the facilitating, to borrow my colleague's terminology, quarterbacking, her colloquialism? I mean, did you feel like that was the issue?
Well, that was one of the issues that came up in conversations with some of you individually, that might be further services that the ESC could offer to you. So that was part of that. But no, it was just, I thought it made sense that you don't necessarily have to have a mediator in if you haven't even begun a discussion with each other. And so that was my mistake.
Let me ask you this, colleagues, should we attempt to come to some consensus on choosing from the two, or should we wait and give an opportunity for our third person to?
Yeah, I think you
Okay.
should.
Two excellent candidates.
I agree.
Okay, very excellent
Yes, ma'am.
candidates, I think.
They need to look at their schedules.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we need to afford them an opportunity to look at their schedules? And to
Absolutely. decide
if they would like to still consider the opportunity, knowing that the next set is weekly and then move forward, but
Well, why don't we, I'm sorry.
I did
Yes.
just say, thank you. I just have one thing I'm just gonna throw out there, and I think they're here, but is there a chance with the ESC, I don't mean to go to the well too far, but that the two of them could team up together, work with us together? So then we keep moving, and if one can, they can tag team, but if they're able to be at the initial meetings, if board willing, maybe they'd be willing, and then we could leverage their talents, but also keep moving.
I like that. Here is a list of the dates. They are both here, so why do you have?
I mean, they could, maybe, can we give them an opportunity to think about that until it's
Right.
tomorrow? Because I don't wanna.
I just thought I would throw it out there and see what, and I don't want to take, I don't want to overstep with the ESC as well, but I think that if it's a little larger project, but they,
To
Yes,
like
ma'am.
ask. I think,
fit in our schedule.
yeah, I think that's a great compromise. I think they're both doing it as a compromise. I don't think we should put them on the spot right now to do that, but since we are planning to meet tomorrow, can we give them at least 24 hours to think about it, if they still want to do it individually or if they would like to team up? And then on tomorrow, we make the choice because we have two excellent candidates. I don't think we need to wait for a third. I think we can give everybody time for clarity to let everything sink in and then pick it up tomorrow and say, because we do meet tomorrow and we have a session for this, but to consider if they want to be considered individually, if they want to be considered together, or if we're going to choose. But I think 24 hours would be,
Ms. Hudson?
I agree.
I'd be okay with that. And I just want to thank Dr. Reimer for bringing us two outstanding candidates.
Yes.
Yes, so thank you.
Yep, the ESC has been incredibly gracious, the superintendent and Dr. Reimer and Dr. Tombaugh, so thank you very much. So we will be here again tomorrow night, and so let's plan to follow up between now and then with them, and they're looking at the dates, and so we'll know more tomorrow.
And
And at the same time, you know, to the extent that we can, identify time, you know, for tomorrow night, you know.
We have a session
Just, well, I know we've got a regular session, so, you know, just to try to estimate.
Right, 7:30.
Looking at
Yeah.
that agenda.
If, now, most of those items are
Although
very quick.
50 of
Yeah,
those
exactly.
are,
Summer
you know,
7:30.
Recognitions.
I can try to get in touch with both of them,
I love summer
you
school.
know, early tomorrow, and see whether or not they're open to that possibility and whether the dates fit for them.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there-
I'm good with that. Yeah, thank you. I think that
Super,
will
we've
work
got
well.
consensus around that. Now, Dr. Reimer, is there anything else you wanted to say regarding ESC or your role or the mediator before we move on to the next? You may feel free to depart. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, both.
thank you.
Thank you.
Or you're free to stay.
You're free to stay. It's a beautiful night. I'm sure they have other things to
Again,
do.
I apologize to the board, but also to the two candidates for the mix-up.
No worries.
That was my
We're
mix-up.
rolling right
Part of it's
along.
probably our fault too.
It's in the past.
That should not-
Just keep swimming. Just keep
Yes,
swimming.
so Dr. Reimer is going to distribute a brief compilation of discussions he had with all 7 of us.
All this is, and I don't want to claim that it's anything that it's not. This is one old man's notes from listening to all of you and from talking to all of you. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to put down what you sort of said to me when I asked you the questions. I had asked you, you'll remember, I had asked you, what do you think the ESC's role is beyond help, that first one, help us to select and obtain the services of a mediator? Because I was confused after listening to the last meeting. I just was confused, and so I wanted some clarification. As I talked to you, it sounded like you were all over the place again as far as individual opinions, until I started looking at my notes, and the notes were, I thought you were almost saying some of the same things, but just using different words. And that's what struck me. And if you'll notice, the first one up there, I said, 6 of you said, basically help us select and obtain the services of a mediator. One of you said something to the effect, direct the board on process and push the project along. Somebody else said, when necessary, bring in a mediator. Another one said, help manage the search. Another said, act as quarterback, scheduling, keeping us on track, communicating with the search firm. I hope you're recognizing some things that you said here. That'll make me feel better. Be the board's conduit to all the other people, the search firm, the legal counsel. Be our liaison, set things up, field info from the board and to the board. Help everyone get on the same page. And then the last one was be a resource mediator. And I put that in there even though I thought that would be a resource for the mediator. And I put that one in there because I thought it could just fit in there, you know, whether you want it to or not. The other 2 were help solicit independent legal counsel and navigate. Those were just, they were opinions by individuals. Help select the search firm and provide resources of the ESC when useful to the board. That last one probably easily slides up into that bigger grouping if you wanted it to go up into there. And what I wanted to know from you was just a little bit more clarity on what additional services can, in fact, the ESC supply to you that you would like to have them give to you.
Anything come to mind right away? I will probably think of things as we move along. Yes, ma'am.
I think as we move along, just, you know, recommendations on search firms that we would, and again, and I think to, a comment that somebody else made earlier to help with maybe the, more of the administrative side of this effort as we move forward, since we don't have board liaison involved with it.
Right.
Right.
Those are
Anything
the two
else?
top of mind for me.
Yeah. Mr. Preddy?
No, I just really see the role as sort of setting the table for us. There are these different pieces that we're trying to accomplish. You know, he's sort of filling in the role of JC for us. You know, keeping us all on the same page, making sure we get to these sort of next steps. What piece do we have next? Mediator, next piece. Independent legal counsel, next piece. Search firm, sort of setting that table for us to make decisions.
Good.
Yeah,
Yes, Mr. Brown?
I agree. I don't see anything on this list that I would say, no, we, don't want or need any help with that. They're, but they're all part of the process that we're going to be working through. And, I think that where ESC can be helpful, it'd be great to have that assistance. And to recognize as well when things are, when legal counsel's needed, when the mediator's needed, when, and I think, the contact and communication with the search firm, beyond helping to identify and select somebody, but the ongoing communication role that we talked about initially for JC, the previous search, is really a good one for ESC and for Bill to help us with.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to speak to each one of us individually. Thank you also for taking the time to watch our last meeting. And anything else from or for Dr. Reimer tonight? Yes,
Well,
sir.
I had a question for you. So are you saying that you believe the ESC could be helpful to you in that upper one that has the grouping, that kind of thing? Or are you saying in all areas? Because I want to be careful we don't overstep our bounds with you and what you want us to help with.
Ms. Hudson?
Perhaps what we can do is let's find out where we are with the mediator. Once we have mediators here, let's just come up with, we have the meetings, let's come up with a game plan, and maybe Bill could talk with, if it's with the two or the one, and have recommendations for it too, but how to kind of do that project management role
Right.
of scheduling, et cetera, and just how we're gonna do that. I think if we had that recommendation, and then our next step is right away is working on the, identifying a search firm. So that's the next big step, I think. And in the interim, while we're doing that, what do we, how do we set that agenda for ourselves of discussion of what we want? What do we use the materials that we already have, et cetera? And I think we can come up with that agenda working with Bill
Yes.
and mediator, and then divide out the duties through that.
Yes, Ms. Gates?
Yeah, I concur, because each of the other entities, two of them are very clear. So legal counsel is only doing legal counsel.
Right.
And that once we have the search firm, many of those tasks are going to shift, because that's what search firms do. And they'll recommend and do a lot. And it really will be that facilitation of keeping us on task. But I think once everyone's on board, to your point, it will become far more clear. When we have people
Great
in,
momentum as
yeah,
we go.
well, everyone will be in their right seats, and then once we're in the right seats, then the bus can go in the right direction. But not necessarily manage the search, but help us, keep it moving, I think was the correct one, and then the correct assessment. But as we knock down these next 3 agenda items, I think it'll become far more clear, and your role will, as you can say, will help us really be far more administrative than knocking down just the subjective parts.
I can tell you from Dr. Goodney that he wants us to do and provide services, whatever services would be helpful to the Columbus City Schools.
Thank you.
So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Reimer. Yes, send our best regards back. We appreciate it. And with that, let's move on, if no one objects, to item 3.3. And so, thank you to Board Members Brown and Hudson for drafting a letter that went out today to the firms that were on the list that we had compiled from everybody's input, that went out today via US mail and via email. And you all have a copy of the final draft of the letter that went out today.
Okay.
So, and we asked them for responses back by Friday. And we'll have those back to be sent to the treasurer.
By this Friday?
Sealed.
May 4th, yeah.
They go to the
May 4th.
treasurer, they'll be
Yes.
sealed.
Yes.
You don't have to open them.
Mr. Treasurer, expect those,
Thanks for the heads up.
yes?
And what's the
Well, I
due
thought we
date?
mentioned that at our last meeting,
Yeah,
so.
Like Dr. Reimer, I was slightly confused after the last meeting, so
Okay.
that clarification. Pardon me?
Never mind.
Candlelight.
Okay.
Is there,
Yes.
could I have a copy of the letter, a list of the attorneys that it went out to so that we can be set
Yes to
to
both.
expect them in and let you know who has and has not responded?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
I would say, so they're expected to be delivered Friday. With that list of the next meetings, I think whatever the following meeting is, if we can make copies of all those and then we could all look through them and make a decision. They're supposed to put in there the, who's on the team.
Correct.
What they'll charge and.
Right, there's a number of criteria that was
Just
listed.
because I don't have my
Experience.
calendar in front of me, I apologize.
Peretti?
When would be our next meeting after Friday's date?
I think zero one for every week.
I know, I'm just
Except
assuming
the
that.
following.
May 15, I think, maybe?
I think we have nothing
No, I
moving to
don't
May
think it's
7th.
We have,
Uh-huh.
I gave my list of dates
we have nothing
to
to
the
do with May
mediators,
7th.
so I don't have it in front of me.
It's May 14, 21.
Nick, I have May 15th.
So,
It's in, oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's the
May
15th.
May
15th.
May 15th,
So we both make a decision on the 15th.
so we'll have time, we'll all have copies of
Right,
everything
that's
before
great.
then, so we should be able to decide then.
So here's,
Ms.
I have a
Gibbs?
question. So are we gonna give them an opportunity to do what the,
Are you suggesting
Mediators?
you'd like to see that?
yeah, I mean, if we're gonna interview everyone, I don't know, do we give them a chance to present or or we're gonna pick them off of paper? Because that would be the same that these two, the mediators did, so if,
What are thoughts on that, Mr. Preddy?
because I don't know it. I don't know them. I know that may be your community, but if we're all going to.
I'm looking for criteria,
Yeah.
for criteria for us, the knowledge and experience and fit. How many firms are we sending this out to?
There were like at least a dozen letters,
Oh, yeah.
because some firms had more than one attorney
Right.
who was going to
Right.
receive the letter. I wonder if maybe we could ask board members Hudson and Brown maybe to prepare some sort of a rubric or metric by which we could, as we read through the responses, maybe ourselves
Sure.
before the meeting, rate them?
Could-
Yes, Ms.
I think I
Gibbs.
still would want to see the top three.
Yes, Ms. Hudson.
Well, so given that our next meeting isn't until the 15th,
Uh-huh.
could we have, like a subcommittee of the
We
board
should.
review, and then we could narrow to three?
We
I
should
do have
have
an
three?
idea on that.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
Just one more
But if
time.
we could, I mean, however you want to do it, 9, 10, or 11, and I could do
okay,
it.
so a subcommittee of
I wanna
three.
interview
I'd
the
happy
top
to
three.
be on that, Ms. Wilson.
Okay, Mr. Cole, Ms. Hudson, Mr.
Keep it
Brown.
fair. Keep
Can the
it-
three of you
it's
do
fine.
that?
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Reyes.
I think it was different, the mediator, we were looking for fit, we're looking for personality, you're kind of looking, well, at least that's what I was looking for, I was looking to see how they would work with this
It's very
group.
different.
It's,
yes.
I think it's
Okay, so
different than
we've got a
legal
subcommittee,
counsel.
I
Legal counsel,
agree.
you can either
I
do your work.
mean, if
or
there's
you can't.
anyone else,
More
I'm happy
technical,
to
yeah.
just,
Sure.
if anyone else wants to do this, I would step.
Thank you. Okay.
So you'll have a subcommittee meeting to briefly go over those candidates and then.
And we can still provide feedback to you and say,
Absolutely.
based on what we
Yeah.
read.
Oh,
Absolutely.
sure. Or
And then you'll
questions
you'll
or.
recommend three on the,
But we would recommend 3 so that we would invite them to come to the
May
meeting on the
15th.
15th.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's
Excellent.
just
Okay.
right.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah, they're okay.
And
And
I
it's all.
don't anticipate that any of the firms, even though we're sending the letter to 3 or 4 different people, they're only going to they're not going to submit multiple, it would be one proposal for the firm.
Correct.
And
that's
every
right.
firm, not every firm
It's gonna
may
respond.
respond.
Right.
They may not have to.
True.
Oh, they'll have time, it's just
Yeah.
whether or not they, there's a lot of things, workload, et cetera, so.
Well, because one of the
Yes, Ms. Gibbs.
one of the challenges I see, as we see tonight, we have amazing attorneys. So how are we going to make the differential between the three? Because we want them to be knowledgeable. But once they all have the same qualification, just the rubric will really help us to make a fair
Right.
piece. And when you narrow it down to three, then to say, okay,
Okay.
this is how we
The
do it.
last item on the agenda is discussion of search firm. I know we'll talk more about this when we have mediators in place. Yes, Mr. Peretti?
Real quick, I just want to preface, as we talk about the search firm, I'm very much in favor of all the work that we've done previously in the community meetings and that input. Before we go any further, we should continue to use that input. I don't think we need to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that again. Let's make sure that we're using that data, the information, what we were hearing, what we wanted to see. I don't think we need to redo that
Right.
part of the
No, not at
process.
all.
I think
Not
we
at all.
already have consensus
Thank you.
that we
Absolutely.
use that
Yeah.
data.
It's from the source of the candidate.
Ms. Hudson has the floor.
Could we possibly get the RFP that we use for that search firm, and maybe Bill could look at that and make suggested revisions to it based on, since they would, the new search firm wouldn't have to do that, or
Right.
what the ESC would recommend on that.
Right,
How
and I
about that?
was going to get to that point, but I think the first question is whether or not we contemplate continuing with the firm we currently have.
That was something that I had
That's the-
suggested that we not
Mr. Brown.
abandon, just
So I spoke with the search firm today, and their guarantee does apply, so they would continue to work with us at no additional charge other than reimbursables. They did indicate, though, that they would assign us a new team, a different team, so it wouldn't be the same individuals we worked with. But it is covered by their guarantee, so they would continue until we found someone, if we want to do that. Ms. Gibbs?
I'm in strong favor of putting out an RFP to look at new search firms who will give us a new look. I still think I would invite them to bid again for the work, but this time we must critically look at who they have placed, what their guarantee is, and which candidates would be off limits to us. And I think they need to share with us who has the three, if they place them, they can't go back for 3 years on that candidate, but another firm can. And that is one piece of information we did not have in the last search. And so as we move forward, I would invite them to apply. I do not believe we should just automatically move with them. And I think that giving other firms the opportunity to bid will give us another fresh look. They don't have to do all that back work. All that is done. They're basically going to bid on their services, and they really need to talk about their ability to bring us to the candidate pool.
Just have we paid them everything?
I do believe we have,
Yes, we have.
Yes.
And we don't get nothing back if we don't hire them, correct?
well, that's
Or is that-
an open question.
What is the?
I think
well,
that would be
also-
then question for council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's ask
Right,
council.
correct.
We could ask
And-
We can ask
But
council.
I guess in that
Yeah,
sense.
they're not selected.
It's more about what's worthwhile, and if they would show us who their new team is, and then what they would do. Because I am leaning towards no.
I'm already there. I'm tipped over.
I hear that.
So I'd like to develop consensus around that particular issue, because that will help us to decide if we're going to go forward with an
Maybe
RFP
we
or
should
not.
ask legal
I think you
counsel
still need to do RFP.
to ask them maybe
RFP.
for reimbursement.
I
What would be the merit, if I
Mr.
may
Vice
ask?
President? Yes, sir.
Thank you. What would be the merit of asking for reimbursement? And the reason I throw that out there is because, quite honestly, they worked with us. They did what we asked them to do.
By and large.
Quite by and large, they did what we asked them to do. We terminated the search, and that was that. Now, they were gracious enough to say, and please, I don't want to. I want to preface by saying that I'm not preferential. I'm not. I want to be very clear on that, because my concern is shared, particularly on this end with regard to talent search and the fact that there are some preclusions on their end that might limit the availability of talent for us.
Won't that be
So-
for any search firm then?
Well, not necessarily. Now, we don't know. We don't know unless we find out through another firm that they have the same type of clause agreement with candidates that they've placed. But that is my concern. But I want to be clear that we are integritous as a board on our end, that we paid a firm that did good work with us, whether we had the desired outcome or not, they did good work with us. I just don't see what the merit would be to ask them for money back that they performed a service for us.
There was a lot of opportunity in the search, and I don't think we need to be the
Right,
good,
not
the good and
necessarily.
bad. I don't think that's,
Absolutely.
that's for.
I thank you.
do
I
have an
just-
opportunity
Mr. Brown?
It was put out there.
in terms of evaluating their work and whether there's any basis for a claim. That's something that we'll work with legal counsel about, and that's something that need not be done publicly. That's in contemplation of,
Sure.
A legal contract.
and so I think that, well, we can take that up separately, but I think that the question that is open, and I think there are two different questions, and that is, do we want to hear from Hazard Young about how they would do things differently, the makeup of the team, the services that they could provide. They'd see the RFP that goes out and respond to it. Presumably theirs would be, without a dollar figure attached other than costs, but all the rest they can address. And I welcome the opportunity to see that and consider it. I don't want to throw it out
I agree.
at this stage.
So, do we have consensus then that we go ahead and issue an RFP? We don't just go ahead with HYA, but we issue an RFP and we allow them to respond? Is that what we have consensus?
Doesn't
I think
cost
so,
us any
yes.
money.
Yes.
Yes, Ms.
I would
Hudson.
suggest that we at least get started on the RFP drafting, because we've got two, so we're using this time right now
Right.
as best possible. And, so by in 2 weeks, we have council retained. I think then we put the question to them and we continue to march forward.
Yes.
And then with council, review those options once they have the whole lay of the land. And I think it's really important, do we have to offer them a chance to mitigate? What's the analysis? I think that there are a lot of issues. And it's important we don't commit ourselves to any one position right now.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
I'm more than happy to lead that subcommittee, and if anyone wants to work on that, the first whack at the draft of the RFP.
Well, I think if you want to work with the
I'll work with Bill.
RPSC.
Right, we do
So
that.
we have our
Dr.
RFP
Reimer.
from last time, and so I'll provide that to Dr. Reimer, and I'll ask that he begin a draft. And
I think I'm going to stick with the legal counsel
Yeah.
side.
Right.
Stick on the
Yeah.
firm piece.
Yeah.
I went to some very good,
How about you and I team up again?
how about that?
I like
Oh, I
that.
was gonna
Alright.
volunteer now.
Yes, we'll take Ramona with us. Decided to
You
take
passed
Ramona.
along some names
Try to get out there and
to
grab you back in.
of prospective search firms.
Did I receive from you? Yes, I did, and from others, yes, I did.
Right, good.
So, all right, so I'll communicate to Dr. Reimer that I'll forward the last RFP to him, and that he's to begin to work on a new draft of that
And he
with
can send us some
with board members Peretti and Gibbs. Yes, Ms.
I would
Hudson.
just ask to that effect, I would also just ask the ESC if they would provide names of search
Yes.
firms
Yeah,
that
look,
other
you're
Central
looking
Ohio
as well.
districts have worked with, that they've worked with.
And I think we'll go back to the there's Council of Great City School, all our member organizations, NSBA, and,
But that's where I think Bill can be helpful.
he can be
Yeah.
very
with
helpful,
that.
hitting those,
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill's got all those
those normal
contacts.
pieces. And I would also invite the firms that presented last time. We have a warm mailing list of people who responded. So, and that was a stack, so we don't
Yes.
have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
I will give to Dr. Reimer the list of everyone who replied to the RFP last time. Anything else for the good of the cause this evening, colleagues?
No.
Is there-
One
Mr.
item
Brown?
tonight would be a good one to mention. I have made a request of you when the meeting notices came out, and that was solely to, I don't think that we talked about it. We set schedule for when we wanted to meet, but the suggestion that we not have a separate meeting, I didn't see any reason to have more than one meeting tomorrow night. It'd be the regular meeting, and at the end of the agenda would be the superintendent search discussion, and not break and do another meeting. The only difference I see is one of board member compensation, frankly. It has no
No,
other.
it has nothing to do with
It has
that.
nothing to do
It
with that
has
at
a
all.
matter.
Colleagues, yes, Mr. Brown simply making a recommendation to the chair. He's allowed
Yeah.
to do that. Are there comments on that?
Well, I want you to be, are you finished with your comment? I don't want to
I think so.
interrupt.
I may
Well-
have something more to respond, but.
Well, no, that has nothing to do with it. We don't get paid enough just to have just meetings. But in order to conclude the business meeting and then to open up a separate meeting to which a potential internal candidate is not there, I think is very important. We need to close the meeting with all the staff that is required to be at our business meeting, and then open up a meeting
Well-
where a special meeting for which it's being called. I mean, we could do it either way, but I think it's cleaner for us to adjourn the regular business
But
meeting.
I'll just say, I
and
mean,
then open.
Mr.
really
Peretti?
quick, I've been paid $300 a month every time since I've been on the board for 5 years. I don't expect that to change at all,
Ever.
and I really don't care if we adjourn the meeting or not, as long as we do it.
So
Why?
my response to Mr. Brown was, it's neater, it's cleaner, it's tidier, we move, staff don't have to feel awkward about, do we stay, do we
That's
leave?
it.
Yeah.
It's just a neater, cleaner way to do
And
it.
if I could.
Yes, Mr. Brown, of course.
I don't see that because we can very easily, since the regular meeting is downstairs and then we plan to move up here, we're going to take a break. It's going to be 5 minutes, except 5 minutes. Our time is more like 15, but, and not everybody is going to come up, but it's a public meeting. So, the public is certainly welcome. We don't need to keep all of our staff. And I just don't see the point in going through the steps of having separate meetings, and that would be true on future dates as well.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, duly noted. Any other business before the board this evening? Yes, Mr. Treasurer?
Just a point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
Since the matter was brought up, if you continue with the current setup of a regular meeting and then a special meeting, I'm sure to be asked a question by my staff, and I don't know the policy for 2 meetings in the same day. Would it be acceptable for me to ask for clarification from the board as to what your expectation is in response to the calculation of board member pay, despite the de minimis amount as noted by many of
It's
you?
2 separate meetings.
Okay,
It is 2
thank you.
separate
You
meetings.
can
The
only do
revised
it.
code,
We're having
Revised
some
code
meetings.
changed recently
Okay.
to a certain amount to a ceiling.
Right.
Yeah.
And so no matter how many meetings you have,
Yes,
there's a
Mr.
ceiling.
Peretti.
And
There's a
and
ceiling.
We've always had a ceiling.
And we never meet.
You had
That's
a
it.
policy for a ceiling, but the revised code changed recently and it could put a legal ceiling. And,
Correct.
I mean,
Didn't
let's
mean
just
to
have the
stir the
meeting.
pot, just wanted
Well, you
clarification.
did, thank you,
No,
Mr.
I
Peretti.
got the.
It's a legitimate question, and
Board
thank you.
Board Member Hudson
So
has a question.
so the district will have to pay more to everybody?
No.
No.
Yes.
You get 3, no, you don't. You only get paid for 3
You're
meetings a
up to
month.
3
That's
meetings
it.
a month,
That's
that's
it.
it.
You never get paid for any
Yeah,
more.
but
Eric.
there's a procedure under our policies for banking the time. If you miss a board meeting later on, you can take the banked time and get paid for it.
Every month, we're gonna have at least 8 to 9 meetings, so I don't understand why we're even fighting, guys.
Well,
Could you clear it
is-
up some other
Is there a
time?
motion to adjourn?
Motion
So
to adjourn.
moved.
Second.
Moved, seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Mr. Brown?
No.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
No.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
And President Baker?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Can and
Thank you.
should work out
Stand
here
adjourned.
now.
Thank you very much.